In today's video, we are joined by Zeneca, who is one of the most respected leaders in the Web3 community. Zeneca is going to drop the alpha for the upcoming Zenacademy PFP project, and we're going to discuss a lot of valuable information that will help you navigate through the Web3 space. If you're looking for a Discord community to join that is revolved around NFTs, feel free to join mine. I'll make sure to put the link down below. All the links for Zeneca, Zenacademy, all that kind of stuff in the description of this video as well. Make sure to go drop him a follow. It's definitely worth it. And without further ado, let's get into it. So what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the channel. Today, I have Zeneca, the infamous. Everyone knows who he is in the NFT space. I'm glad to have you on. This is a video that I've wanted to do for a very long time. I'm so excited that I finally get to sit down and talk to you about the state of the market, things that you're working on, and to just pick your brain about everything that's been going on recently.
I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I know that a lot of people know who you are. Like, you have 300,000 followers on Twitter. People that will come onto Twitter, I'm sure like a lot of people, what happens is they will just come on, they see your name, and they're like, oh, this Zeneca guy, let me follow this guy, Bored Ape. He's got all these followers and everything. Why don't you just give like a little intro on you and how you got to being where you are now?
Yeah, so my background before NFTs and crypto, I was a professional poker player for about 17 years. It's kind of all I did. I went from high school to poker, and then basically straight into this. I dabbled with a couple other things along the way. I went back to university and just never really stuck. So I first got into crypto in 2017, and then the 2018 bear market hit, and I was like, all right, that was fun. Let's go back to back to poker. And I didn't really have that deep conviction in the space. And then 2021 rolled around, and these new NFT things were like around, and I had some friends that were sort of talking to me about them and explaining them to me, and it sounded like this big Ponzi scheme, this cult, this it's all just a scam, which I think is most people's first reaction when you think about like JPEGs or images costing thousands of dollars, let alone tens or hundreds of thousands. But eventually I did some research and sort of started digging into this whole creator economy and this like Web3 and this blockchain thing and how powerful it is. And I sort of like was red pilled and just fell down the rabbit hole, and I've been falling ever since. So like that was the last 18 months. Yeah, that's like me before NFTs and how I got into it.
So what was like your first NFT? What was the first thing that you got into and how?
Yes, I think the literal first NFT I bought was a total meme project because I was in this group chat with some friends, and they just randomly found some degen pixelated mint and were like, hey, maybe we'll get some of these or something like that. And I was being just like total noob that I was. I had no idea how to find anything to mint. I was like, all right, I'll give it a go. It was 0.2 ETH. I think ETH was probably about 1,500 or 2,000 at the time. And like back then, there just weren't many mints. So I was like, okay. And obviously that went to zero. And but not long after, I minted art blocks as like my second real mint. And so that, again, for the first couple months, the prices of those went down. Like I was like feeling like, hey, did I do something wrong? Should I be selling these at a loss? Maybe I did sell some at a loss. But obviously eventually that turned around, and the big thing that really sort of hooked me in, I think, early on was Zed Run. I was able to mint a few horses. I was able to flip a couple, and then one of the ones I kept was a good racer. And so I just spent, basically 4 to 6 weeks. I would wake up, enter the horse into races, go to sleep, and do the same thing the next day. And just like, I was like laughing, like my job is now digital horse racer. This NFT stuff is crazy. And then just continue to stay around in the space. And then, other projects came around. I missed Bored Apes to begin with, but I got in on them sort of, yeah, like definitely very early, like within like 2 to 4 weeks after the mint, and Gutter Cat Gang and Punks Comics and all those early-ish projects. And yeah, we're just fortunate to be like in the space at that time and able to take risks and gambles on those types of projects.
So you had got back into crypto and everything in like early 2021.
Yeah, so February, March.
Okay. So you obviously were around for Bored Apes, grabbed a few that like tickled your fancy. You're like, all right, let me grab some of these. So you've obviously been trading for a while. Like you've been trading since you got into the space. What was your biggest win and what was your biggest loss?
Biggest win, either minting like a Fidenza, 0.17 ETH. I think they're around like 70, 80, 90 ETH now. They hit higher. Potentially, you could also call it my biggest missed opportunity because I sold 3 of them under 1 ETH. But overall, obviously a massive win. Either that or Bored Apes. I think maybe Bored Apes. I bought 3 at between 0.5 and 0.7, and if today they're like 60 to 70. But if you include the mutants and the dogs and the other airdrops and the coins and stuff, yeah, it's got to be Apes. In terms of biggest loss, I mean, yeah, if you want to look at it as like missed opportunities, it's probably the selling of the Fidenzas. But I've never been one to like buy really expensive things and then have them go to zero, like in real life or even in the NFT space. I think my most expensive buy was a Punk at 70-ish ETH, and I think it's still around there. I've not had any crazy losses. I've just had a lot of things where I like put in like 2 to 5 ETH, buying a bunch of a project and maybe minting a bunch, and they just all go to zero because it's like that's kind of the game you have to play sometimes when it's when we're looking at asymmetrical bets. If you find something that really pops off, and you mint something or you buy something at 0.05 and then eventually it goes to 2 ETH, 5 ETH, and you sell those, that makes up for like 10, 20 projects that you buy and they all go to zero. So
Right.
it's probably something like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I could imagine that selling those Fidenzas is tough, but when you trade as much as you did and you have a portfolio that's that big, I think that what people are like, man, I wish I would have minted punks. I wish I would have minted apes. I wish I would have minted Fidenzas.
It
And
would have
these,
sold.
yeah, everybody would have sold. I would have sold.
Yeah.
It's like to
Yep.
have that conviction is just like unheard of. And so that's like part of a trading strategy is that like, it sounds like to you, you're like, oh, I minted a lot of stuff and it went to zero. But the thing is like you have to place your bets and you have to hold on to them for a long period of time because you don't know what's going to hit. Like, I don't think that a lot of people expected like whatever terraforms or I mean, I'm trying to think of like art blocks, like squiggles or like any of these kind of things. Like you had to have a lot of conviction to have minted something like that and held it, especially when art blocks, I remember at the end of last year, those were the things that were moving the hardest. Like, I mean, you would get into an art block drop, it would sell out, and you'd be in an instant like 2 to 3 ETH profit, which at the time was like
Yeah.
12 grand.
Yeah. It was a wild time. Art blocks. I don't think we'll ever see anything like it again. The Art blocks bull run of August 2021 is just something I'll never forget. It was ludicrous and absurd and just wild. Yeah.
So I got into NFTs around August, similar kind of situation where I had somebody that I knew, they mentioned this project to me, bought into it, it tanked, went all the way to zero. I was like, dude, what did I do here? But I decided that I was going to stick around and I was like, all right, maybe there's more to learn here. And I actually remember coming across your project when you launched it. So you came in early 2021, you were building a following, and then you ended up launching Zenacademy. So what was that time period in between when you found NFTs and then when you decided to officially launch Zenacademy? Like what did that look like for you from a trading perspective and from like building a brand? Because obviously it didn't just happen overnight.
Yeah, no, it didn't, but it's so crazy. Like that 6 months really felt like 10 years. And so like this year, 2022, it's like it's November already. This year's just flown by. Last year, I think, felt like a century. And so it's kind of crazy to go from just learning about NFTs to like launching a project 6, 8 months later. But it happened, and it was, I was doing a lot of trading to begin with, and that's like what I was spending most of my time on. After Zed Run, I was like able to flip, and I was like, hey, this flipping thing is kind of cool and exciting and profitable. And there was a lot of parallels to poker with the gambling element and the risk management and the bankroll management and the financial elements and all that. So I was like, all right, turns out I'm decent at this flipping thing, and the market has gone crazy, so let me just see how this goes. And somewhere around the same time, actually, I launched sort of my newsletter, and I started posting these Twitter stats of daily floor prices. And like it was a combination of these things that really started blowing up my following on Twitter and newsletter subscribers. And it was just it was not planned. It was not really anything I intended to do. I never set out to build a brand. It was just like, hey, maybe I'll just start tweeting these things and they might help people. And I created the newsletter because I like to write. And I was like, well, I learn best if I write. So if I have to explain something to someone else, then I have to research it and explain it, and I'll learn better myself. And, if you go back to look at my early posts, they were like project specific. I think I wrote about the Garlic Cat Gang. I wrote about Bored Apes. I wrote about a bunch of the meme projects. So like Yetis and pickles, and there was a bunch going on, and then eventually turned into art blocks and then other things. But
Well, let me ask you on that.
yeah.
So you mentioned that you were like tweeting about like all these different projects and stuff. Were you holding these projects?
So my tweets about the daily floor prices started with just because I was just tracking for my own purposes the floor prices of the projects that I was holding. And I mean, to just take it from back in time to like June last year, you couldn't find the floor price of your projects easily anywhere. It was not, there were none of these analytics websites. It was definitely not listed on OpenSea. Even if you went into the collection page on OpenSea, it wasn't listed. It didn't even sort the prices from low to high. So you had to do like, take 30 seconds of work to find the floor price of a project every single time you wanted to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And so basically what I did was I just did that for the project I was in. I saved like the URLs so I didn't have to go through the process every time. I could just click on the link and go straight back to it. And then I would update it. Like, I was in like 4 to 6 projects maybe, and to just check, every day how things were tracking. And then I had a friend that was like, hey, this is interesting. Maybe, I shared a group chat and someone was like, hey, this is really interesting. And then I was like, well, maybe I should just tweet it out and see. And it just instantly blew up because I think a lot of people were like really looking for something like that. And so it started with just my projects, but then I think maybe even day one, but definitely day two, I like added a bunch of the other bigger projects. So I added CryptoPunks, which I did not have. I added hash masks, which I did not have. And then it was just, I would track. It just grew. The list really, really grew. And then, within a few months, there were 100, 200 projects, which today is kind of laughable because we get 100 projects launched a week or yeah. But back then it was like maybe you get 2 or 3 new projects a week, and that was a lot. And then eventually maybe 5 projects a week, which was way too many. And it was crazy how early and different things were then. But yeah, anyway, it started out. I never owned all of the things I tracked.
Yeah. So nowadays there's like all these tools and shit. Like
Yeah.
it's like super. I mean, there's a lot of dilution when it comes to projects and tools. Like there's not enough people in here to sustain all of these upcoming projects that keep launch that everyone inevitably jumps into. And there's now so many tools where it's like everyone's now a fucking analyst, right? Now everybody's going out and they're like, oh, like that's like one of the biggest utilities is they're like, oh man, like this tool is here. So you were essentially like a manual labor tool for providing data. Yeah. And so I will ask this in response to that whole situation, which is like, do you think that because obviously you were around when like way before all of this Twitter attention was huge, like on NFTs and stuff, do you think that the information that you were providing about these projects at the time, do you think that you were helping to bring attention to the NFT space and these projects? Like, do you and I mean, when I say this, like, do you think that you helped be a part of like the catalyst that made this turn into what it is?
I think there was some part played in that. I don't know how significant it was in the grand scheme of things. Like I think the NFT space was going to explode regardless, and there was that was happening anyway. I probably it maybe made it a little more sticky for people where they were joined and they're like, oh, I'm gonna just check in on these floor prices every day and just like keep checking in, and maybe that kept people coming back. And for the projects that I tracked and listed, it certainly gave them sort of a little more attention and spotlight. But again, this was a time when there were like 2 or 3 new projects launching a week, if that. So I would just track everything. I was like, all right,
Yeah.
I don't have to pick and choose. I'm just gonna, and then eventually got to the point where there were like 50 plus projects, and then a bunch of them had floors of like 0.01 or 0.000, and it's like, well, okay, maybe I'll start removing the ones that have lower floors. Maybe there's less activity, and then as time went on, I had to be a little more selective, and that's when it got tricky. It's like, how do you choose what to keep on? How do you choose what not to keep on? But by that point, the space had like grown large enough that it was fairly negligible. Like there were like 200 projects on the list or 2 lists, and then if you were on there, well, it wasn't the biggest thing in the world, but it was definitely like it was something that it seemed like for a few months, literally everyone in the space was checking and watching and looking into. So it was such surreal is the only like it was such a crazy time. Yeah.
Yeah. So then you decided to launch Zen Academy, which has turned into what it is now, which is, I mean, everybody knows about it. And it seems as though people flock to it because they see you as a transparent, ethical leader in the space, which is something that is very uncommon. And you've also just been working. Like what it comes down to is like you have continued to provide value for people and you've stuck around and you've just been a leader. So people want to naturally join up on something like that because they know that you really mean the shit that you say and you're a leader. Like people, we don't toss that, like people use the word founder, but I like to think about it as like leadership. I did like a lot of studying about that when I was in college and I was in leadership positions. And so all of this led up to Zen Academy, which also is now leading into an upcoming PFP drop. So what was like your initial plan for Zen Academy? And then what does it look like now that you've kind of teased that there's going to be like a PFP portion, and like, what does that all look like?
Yeah. So the initial idea and plan for Zenacademy was the middle of last year. Things were going crazy. I was trading a lot and also creating content. And I realized I loved the content part way more than the trading part. Like trading was stressful. It was risky. It was emotional. It was also not rewarding or fulfilling. Like flipping JPEGs, the world did not need people flipping JPEGs. The world did not need professional poker players. So I never felt really fulfilled there. But creating content, when people would be like, "Hey, your newsletter, it really helped me," or "Thank you for sharing that content. I got something out of it." That was like, "Wow, what's this warm, fuzzy feeling inside? It feels so amazing. I want to do more of this and less of the flipping." And so then, you think about how do people monetize content, and like, if I wanted to go all in and be my job, I was like, I need to figure out how to pay bills, and then I can't rely on a bull market flipping JPEGs forever. And if I did, then I'd be in a bad state this year, probably worse state. But I was like, well, in Web 2, it's, you have a Patreon and you have paid subscriptions and like your newsletter, you maybe make a paid newsletter. But, we're in Web 3 and people as NFTs everywhere. I should just sell NFTs as like a membership to something. And then so I was like, well, what can the something be? And like, I'm not an artist, I'm not like a developer, I'm not a game designer or anything like that, but I'm a content creator. So I thought, well, a lot of my content is education or informational focused. So maybe an academy, Zen Academy, just sort of came up as this idea of a place where we can like teach people about NFTs as well as wherever they are in their journey. But it sort of ended up morphing into more of like a beginner friendly place for onboarding people. Um, and yeah, that's basically the reason we launched. And when we launched, there were actually two tiers. There was the Zen Academy Genesis token, and there was a 333 Club token. The 333 was sort of like the opposite of the Zen Academy, where Zen Academy is for beginners. The 333 is for like founders, builders, and people that want like advice or consulting services for their project or their business. Because I had started doing a bit of that, and I realized there was a lot more people wanting to hire me than I could work with. But then I thought, well, maybe if I sell an NFT that gets people access, then we could do some sort of middle ground thing there. And that was the whole beginning. And it was like I didn't have a plan or a roadmap. It was like, let me just figure this out as I go along. And if you've enjoyed my content, if you want to be part of the ride, then the Zen Academy mint was very affordable, 0.033 and ETH, and open mint for 2 weeks, and people can mint and be along for the journey, and we'll figure it out as we go along. And that's what we've been doing for the last year almost. We minted almost a year ago. And I'm not going to get into like all the stuff that we've done. We did education initiatives and other pieces of content and events and things, but the PFP project is sort of like, if you think about, we've got the 333 Club and then Zen Academy, which is everyone else. 333 is hyper exclusive. There's only 333 of them. Zen Academy is currently, it's for beginners, but it's also for like kind of, there's a bunch of us that are degens. There are people who are a little more advanced. There's some developers, there's some founders in there. It's this like mishmash of the space. And I really want to sort of separate those two sections out a bit more. So keep Zen Academy purely for like beginners to onboard them into NFTs and into Zen Academy and into the whole ecosystem. Open it up to be fully free. So there'll be a free token basically for Zen Academy students, and very excited for that. And then kind of like elevate, graduate, upgrade the existing community into this PFP tier, as well as try and bring a few other people in. And that will be like this tier of people that are like a little more serious about the space, a little more advanced, a little more experienced, more of like maybe the alpha hunters, the degens, the developers, the tinkerers, the people that really just are a little more serious about the space beyond the beginner level, and are just passionate about being in like a meaningful community that's like working together to help each other win and thrive and succeed in this space. And it's like with that in mind that we're launching the PFP basically.
Okay. Yeah, and I actually echo a lot of that. Like when I first got into NFTs, I took like 2 to 3 months before I really even started making content, because I just didn't even feel like I knew enough about what I was talking about. And God, I remember like the first time I even got into this stuff, I was like, man, like I had a headache like every day. I was like, what is all this? And so for you to say that, it resonates with me, because that to me is what a real community is. And that's what you've done, because you didn't just drop this open edition 0.033 little mint pass or whatever, and then, it just fall off like a lot of other projects have done, or like alpha groups and all of that kind of stuff. And I think obviously like you were one of the first people to really do this. And this kind of like leads into my next question too, because now we've seen all the NFT projects that promised the world, and a lot of them crashed and they failed. Some of those people that launched those projects, they just wanted money. They had no plans. They didn't care. There's other people that actually did care, and maybe they just didn't have the support that they needed. And then there are people that they cared and they had the support they needed, and then they got wrecked because of just the market in general. And that's like with PFPs, that's with alpha passes and all this kind of stuff. And so now we are left with people that, in my opinion, like it's really hard to sell out a project now. So you're left with like a lot of people that want to build stuff. It seems like now there's a lot more education, a lot more groups and all this. And so what I wanted to get your thought on is, let's say that somebody's watching this and they want to make money. Like somebody says like, Zeneca, like I want to make money in NFTs. I know that this is a very broad question, but what do you think is the way to do that?
Yeah, it is a broad question. I mean, I think I always say a few things. One is be patient, and like trying to make money immediately overnight, get rich quick. It's just never a good strategy. 99.9% of people fail at it, and you basically have to get lucky to get rich quick. I think focus on investing in yourself, and that's like, it's kind of cliche, but just like learn, educate, consume knowledge, build out your network and connect with people. I think it's one of the most powerful things in Web3, in real life, in any life. It's like network is like not what you do, and it's not entirely that in Web3, and obviously like you can get by without really knowing anyone, but it's just tremendous. It's such a tremendous collaborative space that people are so willing to help each other and work together, that you're sort of missing a massive opportunity if you're not trying to connect and work and build with other people, or just thrive with other people or grow together. There's so many paths you can take. You can try and be a trader and a flipper and investor. The reality is like 95% of people will probably fail at that. It takes a very specific skill set. It's getting tougher every single day. I don't generally recommend that as like a viable strategy, but there you can be a creator, you can be an artist, you can be a developer, you can come up with an idea for an app or a service. There's a lot of services that are needed. Think about what's in Web 2 that works that maybe Web 3 can improve. I think, yeah, like if you're a high school student, you can be a Discord moderator. You can be if you're actually, anyone can be a Discord moderator, obviously, but it's like
Yeah.
no matter where you are, that there are opportunities, and like no matter what your experience, like Discord mod, community manager, these are relatively new jobs that can be for people who have, like, you don't need specialized experience. Like, you don't need to be a coder or an artist or anything like that. You just sort of need to be a people person, or like understanding how to like talk to people and manage a community, or moderate a community and stuff like that. That's something that anyone can learn. And I mean, there's infinite jobs. You can be a translator. You can be, I mean, maybe that's a bad example because AI is making translation, yeah, just a little translator is a little obsolete in today's world. I mean, it's a whole other rabbit hole. AI is
Yeah.
dwarfing everything, but there's no shortage of opportunities. Is the long and short of it. And I think that yeah, if you want to make a living in this space, I just recommend spending some time investing in like learning and seeing what's happening in this space, and yeah, just constantly keep an eye out. And then there's no shortage of opportunities that are going to arise over the next 5 years.
Do you think that trading is a good use of time to make a living in this market?
Not for most people. No, it's really, really tough, and most people are going to lose money. Uh, it's if you're like, if you've got that right mentality and mindset, and have the time to devote to learning about how the space works and how the markets move and how to use bots and like sophisticated tools that are all commonplace now. Yes, you can definitely still make good money, but the vast majority of people that try to trade are going to lose money, especially in today's market.
It seems like today, if you want to make money trading, it's exactly like what you said. It's like you have to have a bot, you have to be sitting at your computer, you have to make sure that you are there when projects mint, you have to max mint them, you know, maybe get like a 2x. Because like here's the thing about NFTs, it's different than crypto. If you're trying to make money flipping NFTs on a degen mint or something like that, you would have to like it's like anything else. It's like, let's say that you have like water bottles, right? Like you go buy 100 water bottles, and then you have to like go and sell them off individually one by
Mhm.
one. But if you're trading something like crypto, it's like you can get in and you can just get out because there's liquidity with them. So it's
Mm.
like these days trading NFTs is way harder because of a lack of liquidity. There's an increase of bots, and there's nobody that wants to hold these things. Like there's way more sell pressure than buy pressure, at least in my opinion. So like that's one thing that I definitely wanted to hear your thoughts on, just because I think that obviously there's a, you know, people chase hyped projects. We just saw art gobblers and all that, and obviously like that was a lottery ticket for some people, and that wasn't even like a degen thing. That was really just about like understanding information and paradigm. Okay, this, there were a lot of people that talked about it. I talked about it on this channel. Giancarlo buys tokens talked about it and whatever.
Mm.
So I think that there are still opportunities to make money, just maybe not in like the volume trading that we may have seen with like Bored Apes, or there were like a lot of projects last year that it was just, you know, whatever it was, like things were going absolutely crazy. So yeah, and I personally do think that there will be a time when trading secondary will come back and it will be a viable source for you to make some good money. But right now we're just in a flippers market and everyone kind of has that mindset so that's like really where we're at, you know?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. I actually think that it'll basically forever there'll be the ability to make money trading NFTs one way or another. Kind of just like there's always opportunities in the stock market, even when things are dire, you can short the stock market and you can make money there. There's you know, there's people trading currency markets, FX markets, and you can make money there, all the time. And I think NFTs will, I mean, are in that spot and will continue to be in that spot. We'll go through phases where you can kind of it's a little easier and like anything you buy is likely to go up, and there'll be periods where it's a lot tougher and the competition is tougher, and you have to have just like the level of skill required or the understanding increases. And but there'll always be the possibility to sort of make money. It's getting harder and harder, and it's yeah, in my opinion, it's just not a viable option for most people. Most people are going to fail, and most people are just not necessarily cut out for it with the mentality and the psychology and all of that, because that's a whole other side of it that's really it's difficult, it's taxing, and it's not most people's sort of default mindset to be able to handle massive swings and financial wins and losses and potential wins and potential losses and all that kind of stuff on a regular basis.
Yeah. And it's like ultimate regret because, you know, you can buy into something and like, I don't even really want to get into all this, but cause
Mm.
I could go on like a full rant, but yes, you're right. Not everybody that is coming into this market is just naturally a trader willing to learn how to do it or take the time to do it. And there are some people that are just naturally better. It's just skill, just like anything else. Like trading
Hmm.
is absolutely a skill. You have to have emotional balls of steel and that's obviously something that you have, and like a lot of these other traders, like they have that as well. They're willing to take those risks. So, you know, before we go down that rabbit hole, I did want to switch it up a bit because, you know, we talked about Zenacademy, we talked about just things that you think are lucrative in Web3 in terms of how you can make money and that kind of thing. I want to get your opinion on something that a lot of people have been talking about on Twitter, and I guess it's like a mashup of things. So it would be the new attention economy that we're seeing nowadays. There's a lot of people making content. There's a lot of people that are sitting on Twitter Spaces. There's so much divisiveness between the internal community, where it's like, I feel like we're in this bare bones type of situation where you have people that are almost like trying to create the rules, and they're trying to decide what is right and what is wrong. And I wanted to get your thought on how things used to be in comparison to now, where you do have so many people that are sitting on Twitter Spaces. There's a lot of discourse, and I think that it is obviously something that a lot of people are paying attention to. So I guess, like, in a nutshell, what is your thought on the way that Twitter has shifted for NFTs? What is your opinion on Spaces and the content that's being made? And yeah, I guess that's like the main thing.
I mean, it seems kind of toxic lately and like a lot of noise. I honestly am mostly just ignoring it. Don't I don't go into most of those spaces, really any of them. And I think that I hear people talk about how toxic it is, and that's unfortunate, but it's like, well, just don't engage, don't join them. And you can, like, there's still plenty of awesome people building and doing cool things and being positive and networking and yeah, like that there's Twitter, any social media is an echo chamber, and it's like the people you decide to follow, surround yourself by, and interact with are the people that you will sort of continue to sort of be. You will see them on your timeline, and you'll sort of continue to be in that echo chamber. And I think that, yeah, like it's unfortunate that we're going through this like period of toxicity, I guess. But it's again, it's sort of like restricted to a subset of the space. It's not the whole space, and there's still like so many people doing awesome things, building and creating cool stuff and delivering value and engaging and being positive, that I just generally try to stick to those communities, and I recommend most people do that.
It seems like a lot of people are now shit posting. People want to get likes on their posts more than ever before, and NFT Inspect has become a game. And it's like everybody wants to get to the top of NFT Inspect because they think that that will increase their social presence on Twitter. What are your thoughts about all of those subsets?
Yeah. I mean, the whole NFT inspect and people going for likes, it's a game, and some people like to play that game, and more power to them. You know, there's room for everyone in this world, and there will probably be a subset of the space that wants to engage in shit posting, especially in a bear market. People are just bored and trying to have fun, and great for them. I think that, you know, there's room for, again, lots of people, and if you don't want to engage with that, or you're not a fan of that, then you can just basically ignore it. You can curate your timeline, you can block people, you can mute them, you can do whatever you want in terms of your timeline. And I personally would much prefer to have like a post with 3 likes and 1 comment that's like high quality of substance and with engaging with people that I want to engage with and find meaningful, rather than like a post with 1,000 likes, where maybe the substance isn't quite there, and people are like, um, just, you know, going to disappear and jump to the next, you know, attention spot in the space, when it shines. So yeah.
One other thing that I wanted to get your take on is I come, like, before I was in Web3, I worked for one of the biggest like media companies in the world in advertising. And it's no secret that if you listen to the radio or if you go on TV, there's commercials, there's ads. And now we have like this I guess it's like a disconnect when it comes to advertising and promo in NFTs. And there seems to be this negative connotation on promoting things when it's not anything unusual, but it's for some reason people are having this issue. I don't know if it's undisclosed payments that people have an issue, or promos, or just like regular promos. But you even mentioned, you're like, oh, I'm a creator, I'm going to launch this NFT, whatever. But on other social media platforms and just in the world in general, like if you are somebody who has an audience, I'm not going to use the word influencer, but if you are a creator, if you have an audience, then companies will come to you and they will say, hey, do you want to promote our service? Do you want to promote our project? What is your opinion on what advertising looks like in Web3, and why do you think that there is such a negative connotation when it comes to promotion?
Yeah, it is super interesting that there is this negative connotation perception, and it's very real. I think it stems to the fact that if we go back even a year, and certainly before I was really as active in this space, and even today, but like let's say you go back a year, the vast majority of things that were promoted were scams. There were rug pulls. There were like people just extracting money from the space. So as a protective measure, I think the veterans or the regulars or the people that are active in the space just put up this shield and were like, yeah, I mean, paid promotion is bad. And it's just something that has prevailed to this day. I think for the most part, it still is bad when most people do it, and like the space hasn't really, or at least up until now, hadn't really gotten large enough where people had any real avenue to market or advertise non-crypto related things. So it used to be promoting or marketing some shit coin, some meme coin, or some rug pull NFT project, and everyone was like, that's awful. Nowadays, like if I did a deal with, I don't know, Coke, just for example, it's probably never going to happen. But like, and I started just shilling Coke, it's like, okay, I think that would be a lot more accepted than, if you're sponsored by, like, sports stars are sponsored by, clothing brands all the time, Nike, Rolex, whoever it is. People get sponsored by people all the time. I think if that happened in the Web3 space, it would be a lot more accepted than if people are like shilling other crypto related projects.
Well,
And I think it's just like a time thing as well.
I was gonna, like, I didn't mean to cut you off, but like one thing, like for example, right? Let's say that we're talking about something like FTX, right? You would say like, okay, it's a crypto exchange, like, I'm promoting, like you get a referral code or something like that, right? For FTX. And that's something that like at the beginning of every post or whatever, you're like, oh, FTX like sponsors me, use my code. And that would be fine because it's like, a company, maybe something like that. But what if you were sponsored by Celsius? Right? And like, let's say that you had like
Right.
a code for that, and then all that stuff happened, right?
Yeah. It's
That's
it's a difficult space. I mean, FTX is like blowing up now. A lot of people are like turning against them, and they have a lot of negative community sentiment because of some of the stuff and policies Sam is putting forward. So, I mean, that's when it comes down to, as a content creator, influencer, whatever word you want to use, you have to pick and choose the people and the products and the companies and the services that you want to associate yourself with. And some will be riskier than others. If you promote something that has like 20% returns or more, and it's unsustainable, and then people get wrecked by doing that, then there is some level of responsibility on you. Obviously, do your own research and stuff, but I think as a creator, you should vet the things that you're going to recommend. And so like, we have not really done any of that before, but we're planning to, because it's a good revenue stream as a content creator. And the example I always give is Ledger. Normally, I have my hardware wallet here, but
yeah.
like I use a Ledger hardware wallet. Everyone should use a hardware wallet. It's really smart to protect your assets. And if I refer people, then I get 10%, or like Zenacademy gets 10%. And that seems like a win-win situation. So I think there's plenty of those. And then it's just like, where do you draw those lines? And as long as you sort of A, disclose that you're getting this a referral link, and B, can sleep at night by referring products that you think are good for people that you may, hopefully, that you actually use or stand by, that to me makes total sense. And I think as this space continues to mature, we'll get more okay with people and projects and people like promoting things. It just gets icky when it's like promoting a singular project, because this space is already high risk. And then if you're like encouraging people to invest in some crazy high risk asset, it gets kind of irky. But if it's a product or a service or company that's been around for a while, FTX, Binance, Coinbase, Ledger, NordVPN, like we see all these service things, and those are things that I think it's quite acceptable to promote even today.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to just hear your thoughts on all that, just because I think that that is a point where I feel like back in a couple months ago, people were just getting mad because they saw other people making money. And I think that that's like a huge thing, is like, I don't think that people cared about promotions. It's like, dude, you can't get mad at, like, whoever, insert any influencer, football player or whatever, for
Mm,
getting a Nike sponsorship, and then they're like, oh,
right.
Nike, just do it, kind of situation. But yeah, like I've seen so much of that. And I always, and I hear what you're saying, like, about, if you're promoting a project, that's one thing. If you're promoting a company, it's another thing. And so I'd be interested to see like how that evolves as time goes on. And then the last thing that I wanted to kind of get into is, just like, if you could give yourself a piece of advice, or if you could give everybody a piece of advice from Zeneca, what would it be? Just based off of stuff that you've learned being in Web3, like, what's the biggest piece of advice that you would give to people?
I give it to beginners, and I think it's just as applicable to anyone. But it's just like, be patient. Patience is virtue. It really is. And I think that we're so inundated and bombarded with FOMO all the time, even in a bear market, especially in a bull market. And people think that you have to do stuff now, or you're going to miss out. And the reality is that you can take your time. You might miss an opportunity today, but in doing so, you might also avoid 10 traps that you would have fallen into. And if you zoom out a little bit and look at a 1, 2, 5, 10 year, 20, 50 year time horizon, taking your time to do things right and making sure you make smart decisions and survive and like continue to be in this space is a lot more important than trying to pick the exact project and making sure you get into the next big thing that's going to 10x or 100x, because that's a losing game, and you might get lucky. You might get lucky for a while, but it's really tough. And again, the vast majority of people fail at that. So just generally being patient, I think, is just it's just good life advice too.
Okay, for sure. Yeah. Well, look, Zeneca, thank you. I appreciate you coming on, and for everyone that's watching, make sure you drop a like, all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna make sure to put all of Zeneca's links down below. If you don't already follow him, feel free to do so. I know you're a very busy guy, and so I wanted to thank you for taking the time to hop on the channel, talk with my community and me, and just like, hear your perspective on everything that's going on. So it was a great time, and like I said, I seriously appreciate it.
I appreciate it as well. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been a pleasure. Like, this was a great conversation. Awesome questions. Really enjoyed spending this time with you.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you, man. All right. Well, look, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.